here we are again. I'm very, very excited and pleased to be back in Tampere, and with another C major symphony. Last time I was here, I was conducting Schubert's great C major symphony, and now I'm here to conduct Schumann's great C major symphony, if you like, his second symphony. Actually, his third, because his fourth was composed second, and it's really one of my favorite pieces and symphonies of all time, and that's really exciting. And I also should say I'm very pleased and grateful for the orchestra to have me this week, because it's an unusual time, and the efforts made that I could come here were great. And this is actually my first full orchestral symphonic week since I was in Chicago in March, where I got to the dress rehearsal, and we did the dress rehearsal, and then 2 hours before the concert with Chicago Symphony, it was cancelled. So this is the week, this is the day I go back to working with symphony orchestras. So it's a very exciting moment and a beautiful program. Yes, I think the fact that Ginastera took a long time to compose the piece, it was a drawn-out commissioning process, and there was some uncertainty, first of all, about who the soloist would be in the end. So I think that was a practical thing. But also, in terms of compositioning phase, I think it was a transition from a sort of second phase to the third phase, and you can hear all those elements in the piece, and that's why it's exciting. There is the folkloristic element still that was sort of more from his previous compositions, and he would enter a phase of more modernist approach to his music, and this is also audible in the music. I hear a real hybrid of sort of Central European modernist influences, especially Bartók. In the second movement, you have this sort of very mysterious, beautiful string fugato or string fugue, which also reminds us a little bit of the music Kubrick used for The Shining, which is the middle movement of Bartók's music for strings, percussion, and celeste. There's this sort of scary music. And of course, it's no surprise, because Bartók was also a composer who was drawn to folk music and was able to incorporate it in his own language. And Ginastera is a similar case. So we still have in the first and last movement this typical Argentinian malambo dance motifs in there, but then also music of extremely colorful, like you would maybe expect from a harp concerto, colorful harmonic nature. And then again, all these new extended techniques that were also new for the harp at the time, playing the strings with the fingernails, hitting the body of the harp. So these were sort of the modernist influences, but they're very percussive elements, which you would maybe not expect from a harp concerto. But they also fit with the sort of folky character of the piece. That's true. Well, initially, when he started out, he was in that position where he basically, 1845, I think he had the worst bout of depression he has experienced, or he had experienced so far. And then, I think, like for many artists, making their art is a way of a therapy, of a cure, and overcoming their fears and their psychological condition. And I think writing this piece was very much for Schumann coming out of this situation. You can still hear the depths of the emotional depths he'd gone to, but he is overcoming this sort of situation through the piece. And also, at the same time, he was studying a lot of Bach. This was another way of therapy. He was playing a lot of Bach. He was even composing these Choralvorspiele, inspired by Bach. And I think this is a really interesting piece, because it's the combination of this personal struggle and the influence of Bach or Baroque music. You can hear a lot of these sort of chorale music and very simple string lines that are almost like psalmodies or monodies and chorales, with this whole contrast of his personality, and there is this, when he was a great music critic, and sometimes when he was writing, he had these two different characters that would approach a piece of music that he would review from different angles. So there's Florestan and Eusebius, and Florestan was the positively minded, heroic person, like from the Beethoven Fidelio, and Eusebius was the sort of monk-like, very sort of reflective personality. And a lot of people say this is very much mirrors Schumann's own personality and the conflict in his personality, almost like a polar disposition. And these two elements, like these two voices, are very much to the fore in the symphony, and they're in dialogue constantly. And in the end, they come to a really, really positive conclusion where, in a way, Florestan is able to take Eusebius with him. But it's also the voice of Eusebius, the contemplative and the reflective voice, is still there, but really with an element of hope. So it's an extraordinary piece of music. I mean, there's no comparison to the situation, for example, in America or the UK, because like in this country, German orchestras are largely, the subsidy of the state is much greater than it is, for example, in America, where they really rely on ticket income. And of course, in a way, the country has done relatively well in terms of controlling the situation and counting on the sensibility of the population. I think it's a very sensible government that's trying really to do the best, but finding ways of opening up the culture again, supporting the artist. And I've been to concerts in Berlin which were really well handled, and orchestras are doing their thing. I've actually seen less sort of streamed concert, but I can see that orchestras put on performances with reduced capacity and reduced orchestration, and it seemed to work, even though we are also seeing that those tickets that are available, which maybe just a third of what was originally available, they're not all being sold, because clearly there is still a certain anxiety within the audience about this situation, and it's to come back is a big commitment, is a big ask to the audiences. So actually some concert halls which are selling tickets and are open to the public, they're struggling with audiences, even with a reduced capacity. So it's an interesting thing that the audience is being more cautious than the organizations that want to keep playing and keep playing to audiences.